So welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to show you how we make the wheel carrier ladder from scratch, all out of lightweight aluminium. So come along and see how we do it.
So the initial stage of making a wheel carrier is cutting the tube down to length. Each wheel carrier has 4 sections of tube which I need to cut to length and then bend. So prior to bending the tube, we give all the tubes a buff up with the sander. This makes when we powder coat it, the paint grabs to it much better and bonds to the tube, so less chance of it flaking in future. In order to get the bend in the correct place, every tube has what you call a backstop. It's a measurement on the tube, so when you put it in the bender, you put it in the right place so it bends it in the correct position. So pop this in the bender so. Oh, nail. That's wrong way around. Cut, cut. To stop us getting a twist in this U-bend, you have to level this up. Make sure that's level. So that will stop them, so that should be a uniform U after their bend. And now you have a U-bend. 290 degrees, no kink, no twist.
So the first stage of the fabrication side of things, once Mick has obviously bent and cut all the tube, Lewis will then work out his backstop for notching. This is a really good tool for notching notches for tube. So now that everything's notched, this is a side piece that follows the shape of the van door, and then we also kink it back in at the top. So this is how we do that. Lewis has marked off his backstop. He set his level tool on, so then we can transfer this over to our bender to get this bend to come around. There is a certain backstop for each one, but that's a secret for us, so if anybody wants to copy it, they can figure that bit out themselves. So we're going off the actual line of our jig. It comes in, and that's perfect for the top of our door on the van. So the next stage is we put on our brackets that bolt to the hinges. So they be set on in a specific place where we have the jig done for that. And each van's completely different. And we've got like different jigs for different vans. So that's the first stage that we do. We'll get them tacked on, clamped into place so they can't move. And then we always like to double check our centers for the hinges, just to double check to make sure that we're happy with it before tacking it on. So now we've got the section that fixes to the hinges and follows the shape of the van. This section is where the wheel sits on. So this is the most important bit. And then this is where we start to use this part. Slides it in. Uses force to slide it in. Because Mick's overbent that slightly.
Cut.
We'll just blame Mick, but it's not really Mick. Just tap it in. Nah. People wonder why it costs so much. These wheel carriers are so expensive, but they're not actually that expensive when you see how much work goes into making one. Not right, Ben? And that's what you call a perfect fit. Yeah, so now at this stage we've got our jig frame set up, backstops to stop it going to where it doesn't want to go, because this is exactly where we need it for whenever the wheel sits on the van and it's in the right location. So what we're doing here is we're making sure that this D-loop is the same distance on each side.
Yeah.
And then once we're happy with that, we can tack these two sections on. This profile plate is where the central eye,
Centering for
this profile plate is for where the centering cone goes. Is that better, Ben? The wheel goes on, threaded bar comes through, the thread bar comes through, wheel goes on, centering cone. So this needs to be in the middle of this. So
expertly put.
So that the wheel sits in the middle. You get what I mean, but...
Don't you indulge with these boys then? See what I mean? Oh, yeah.
So this is a stiffening plate with our logo in it, just to give a bit more support, because this is where the wheel's going to sit, and then this just strengthens up this area here so that it doesn't buckle. So this D-loop is for whenever the wheel sits on, it leaves it easier for the customers to unbolt and lift the wheel off without the wheel falling off. So this helps with that. And it goes on here. So Lewis will mark off the center of this, and then he works out the distance between this for where this goes. And he also uses our spirit or square. He also uses it. I've been using this for 25 years and I forgot what it's called. So this square is in a certain position now so that this is level with this D-loop. If Mark McRae is wondering where square is, I might have took it from whenever I was working back in Ireland. So this is his square, but it's not my square. He's probably looking for it.
How long have we been looking for it?
I would say I've got that 10 years, at least. But he stole it off Jerry, because it's got Jerry on it.
Of course Jerry's involved.
So Jerry, I know Jerry. So Jerry, if you were wondering where your square is, Mark stole your square, and now I've stole it off Mark. So there's been a lot of people asking. Yes, the ladder looks really good, but how do you actually get up on from the bottom right the way to the top. So we add in these steps, which are just a profile that we have designed that goes in the tube. And then we've got the jig set up so we know where it needs to be. So this is another very important stage. Every stage is important, but this is important. So this is the section that goes on here. Then we'll mark out the center for notching so we know that it's going to notch in the right place. And Lewis is going to do that now. Now that Lewis has notched this lovely, we can work off our jig and then we can cut this at an angle because of this bend being at a different angle. It leaves this bend not at 90, so we need to cut this at a certain angle to suit when it goes in there. And then we also work back 20 mil because we need to cut it here and not here, because if we cut it here, we don't have that section to notch. So that's just our mark to know where it goes within regards to this. And then we go back 20 mil for our mark, so that's the 20 mil cut. And then we'll notch it. So we don't bother cutting it on the saw, we just cut it on the big grinder. It's much quicker and you don't have to mess about with changing the angle on the saw blade and saw thing to change the angle. So we just cut it. So now we've got this angle on our tube. We need to move this to suit the angle of our tube so that it cuts it square. Oh, there's a bumblebee look.
Or a beta, I think.
The bee. So now in theory, this angle's changed so that this cuts at the angle of this tube so that it fits on this because it's not 90, and then it'll work lovely in here. So it'll leave my life a lot easier when I go to weld it, when it's nice, no pressure. So now if you come in closer and I'll show you why we've done all this. So we've got a nice notch here for a nice weld. It just makes our makes our welds look a lot nicer whenever the notch is nice and tight and perfect. And then the same on this side. If you have a look at this side, it's all really tight together and quite beautiful. Now we have all this in place, we'll use our steps, which slide in here. And then Lewis will slide in that other one. Then we'll slightly hammer it in. We're using a rubber mallet. If you're wondering why we're hammering something with aluminium, this rubber mallet's brilliant because it doesn't leave any marks on our tube. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Lewis now will mark out to make sure these are all in the right position. Tack this on, and there you have it. Well, there's actually one more. That bracket is welded on in here. And that's important because that fixed to our door, and it needs to be in the right place, so whenever we put it through the hole through the door, it's in where we need it to be. That's why we've got 2 uprights, so we know every one of them is going to be the same. That's everything tacked up. Bend's all done. We leave this slightly longer and then we cut it off after, just to allow welding in and around this side, because it can get very hot whenever you go. If you were to cut this off and weld it, it's easier to cut it off after and leave this with something that we can work on. I'm kind of rambling on here. So now you've seen it cut, bent, fabricated. Now it's time to weld it. The final stage of making the wheel carrier ladder is our stainless steel locking bolt, which has our logo and all in. So we'll add on a stainless steel nut into the inside, and then we'll weld the back side of it so you don't see anything on the outside, so it looks nice. So we'll first of all tack it on, and then we'll get it nice and level, so whenever you screw it in, it goes straight, not all bent. And once I'm happy with that, I'll tack the other side and then I'll weld around. I'll just actually weld on ahead. So there you have it, the wheel carrier ladder. This one's powder coated, which does look really nice and textured matte black. So yeah, we're going to do a lot more videos on this kind of stuff, maybe the cargo carriers, roof racks, different things. So please give us a follow if you want to see a lot more of the builds and fabrications. And thanks for watching.